Let's get ready to rumble.
All right, so we're still debating the SAVE Act. Is it going to pass? Is it not? Democrats are claiming Jim Crow. Republicans are saying this is how we get election back on track and better. And Stephen A. Smith is going to bring a host to help us make sense of it. All right, let's see it. Let's see if he can help us make sense of it.
First, you heard that sound. You hear both sides of the aisle. Just to crystallize and illuminate the issue for the American public out there, give me the biggest argument that both sides are making for their respective positions on this issue involving the SAVE Act, please.
Sure. Yeah, so I think the Republicans right now are saying, voter ID is very popular, and we use our IDs for many purposes, to get on planes, to open a bank account. And so to them, the argument would be, we're doing it for many other aspects of our daily lives, and so why couldn't we do it for this? And that is certainly one component of the SAVE Act, bringing a very photo ID to the polls to verify your identification. I think the Democrats would argue that that is only half of the SAVE Act. The other half is much more difficult to comply with, and that is the requirement that voters show documented proof of citizenship in person to an election official or other government employee, and that's actually much harder to do.
Why is it much harder to do, sir? Explain.
Yeah, I think it breaks down a few different ways, right? There are only a few different documents that actually prove citizenship, and I think that's really what the public doesn't realize. The easiest way to prove your citizenship would be your passport under this bill. It's unexpired. It has to have your current name, but if you have a passport, you're in a pretty good place. You would have the required citizenship document to register to vote. The other way of doing it is through a government ID, so a license, and then some other document like a birth certificate. So first, I want to say that most Americans have a driver's license, so they can certainly verify their identity at the polls, but for registration purposes, a thing like a real ID actually doesn't qualify. Only 5 states have real IDs that would qualify under this bill because they have an enhancement for travel into Canada. So I think that most people don't have that ID. So then you have the birth certificate. Birth certificates are, first of all, many people don't have access to them. And if you don't have access to it, it's hard to get. But even if you do have access to it, the SAVE Act has a lot of specific requirements in it for what has to be on that birth certificate. It has to list a parent's name. It has to list place of birth. It has to have a signature of a valid representative from the jurisdiction you were born in. It has to have the seal of that jurisdiction. And I can tell you that if people look at their birth certificates, I think they would realize pretty quickly that what they have for the birth certificate, and it will be their original birth certificate, might not qualify under what's in the SAVE Act currently.
All right, so let's go through this. Right? Let's go through this, because he said a lot of stuff, and obviously like people are saying that this is ridiculous to a point. All right, let's go here. He said there are a few things, right, that the SAVE Act is going to require in order to do it. He's correct. The real identity compliance photo ID, right? He said that only 5 states have the actual proof of citizenships. Most other states have your little gold star on the top of your driver's license. That's a real ID, and a lot of places have done that. So if you're not in one of those 5 states, then obviously you just have a regular ID. So then you would have to bring, right, according to the SAVE Act, you would have to bring an additional document, right, like you do when you do your taxes and other things. They always have to, when you go work at UPS, you always have to bring 2 IDs, 2 form IDs. It's nothing new, right? I hate the way that they keep thinking that this is some kind of new ID. We just talked about how in New York City, to help us know, you need 2 IDs. So this is nothing out of the ordinary when it comes to the ID. You need a certified birth certificate, right? A consular report of birth abroad. So if you're in another country, but you're still an American, naturalization or certificate of citizenship, and then obviously the tribal documentation. Now, he said that it is difficult for most people to get their birth certificate. Well, I looked it up. And the range when it comes to the totality, how much you have to pay in order to get your birth certificate, like from your state, or if you live in another state, but if you want to get your birth certificate from the state that you're born in, the range is typically $10 to $55. 55 being, the actual placing the order and then the delivery fee. $55. Bro, I cannot stand how they talk about how, oh, it's not available. It's hard to get to. So Americans have 55. It's hard for them to muster up anything from $10 to $55. And I get it. The economy is crap right now, but $55 is not a lot. I'm pretty sure most Americans spend more on their Amazon wish list, on their Amazon subscriptions, on their streaming subscriptions. Shit, they spend more money on the vape store and on the smoke store and on their marijuana dispensary card, right? Than they would. So, to me, it's always funny. It's hard for them. Most of these people have social medias. They have emails. They know how to get on the damn internet. So they can get to they can just Google, ChatGPT, Gronk, Claude, whatever you're using, you can look up and say, how to get my birth certificate from state that I was born in, right? And they will show you. And then all you have to do is spend a little bit of money, not $100, not $200, not $1,000, under $80 to get your birth certificate. You see how they try to complicate this shit, right? You see how and by the way, here's another fact, right? This is from this guy's own place. It said that 12% of registered voters lack either passports or a birth certificate. Only 12%. And then more than 9% of Americans of voting age, or 21.3 million people, didn't have easy access to citizenship documents. Okay, if there's 70 million Americans and only 21.3 of them don't have easy access, whatever that means, the rest of them have access. This is why this argument is so stupid, and this talking point is so dumb.
What would be the easiest way to prove your citizenship with an ID in today's day and age in March of 2026? Would it be going the route of the passport? Would it be them validating the driver's license situation in a different way to make it more authentic? What would be the easiest path towards acquiring the kind of proper ID where this would not be an issue?
Yeah, so the clear, easiest path is showing your passport. But the fact is, only about 45% of Americans have a valid current passport. And getting one isn't so easy either, right? There's a pretty high cost, and you have to bring significant amounts of documentation to get it. So yes, it's easy if you already have a passport, not the easiest way to prove your citizenship if you have to go and get the passport first.
Okay, so the people that went to go get the passports, was it an easy process for them? What the same process for the 45% of Americans that already got it. It's the same. It would be the same damn process for the people who don't have it. So how long it takes for them to get the passport, the 45% that got it, they had to get it. Now, obviously, if you're saying, well, most Americans don't travel abroad, so they don't see a need for passports. Okay, whatever. The process doesn't change. The 45% of Americans who have passports, right, went through the process, and so if you had to go get one, it literally all you have to do is the same thing that the 45% did. If you're gonna go that route of getting the passport, it's not fucking rocket science. It's the same process. I hate when they're like, oh, but the 55 that don't have it, they're going through a different process. It's harder to get that. It's the same process for the 45, bro. What they did, you do. And if you're not going to go through the passport, obviously, the SAFE Act gives you other means as to how to get it. And if you're saying, well, the passport route is too expensive or whatever. I just told you that getting your birth certificate is cheap. It's cheap. Most Americans spend more money probably on extra on stuff they don't need than going to go get their birth certificate.
That make the argument more valid when Senator Chuck Schumer and others are on Capitol Hill bringing up words like Jim Crow 2.0, disenfranchisement, 20 to 25 million people not being allowed to vote, them being compromised for their right to vote, et cetera, et cetera. Does that legitimize their argument based on what you just described?
Yeah, I think, look, there will be some barriers to the registration process that do not currently exist if the Save America Act passes. That's for sure. You know, the certain numbers, I think they're up for debate. I think if parties have the perspective that they want a citizenship requirement and they want the documented proof of citizenship requirement, there are better ways of doing it than what's currently laid out in the SAVE Act. So the SAVE Act does what we call front-end verification. It requires the individual to prove their citizenship to the government using certain documents. And that's hard. Like I said, you know, only 45% of Americans have a currently valid passport. About 85% of people say they have a ID plus a birth certificate. Although, as I said before, the birth certificate requirements in the SAVE Act are a little bit more stringent than I think people realize. And about 88% have one or the other. So we're talking about 12% of Americans that would not be able to easily produce a document proving their citizenship, even though they are eligible to vote.
Easily. I could easily go onto the internet, go to McDonald's free Wi-Fi, go to Starbucks and get free Wi-Fi, and easily get this documentation that I need. And it's only 12%. Bro, here we go again, making exceptions to the rules. Making exceptions to the rules. 12% of Americans. Go find out why that 12% doesn't have it. Is it internet access? Is it income access? What is it? What is the problem with the 12%? We heard the Democrats saying, oh, because it's the 12% include the stay-at-home moms that can't go and find the time. Right? It's apparently it's the black people and Hispanic people and the brown people that don't have access to internet in the 21st century, 2026, United States. They have no access to internet. He just said 88% of Americans have the driver's license and the birth certificate. What's the problem? What's the problem? Now, in the discussion, he does say that this would be better if you did it in a non-election year. I grant that. I can grant that, because if you're doing it during the election year, and let's say you have to vote and let's just say your birth certificate isn't the way that the SAVE Act is claiming that you need to have these other things in there, right? Okay, cool. We know that the Democrats and Republicans can't get shit done anytime together. This would have been, like he said in the video, this would have been better if it was in an odd year where you can kind of flesh it out more and people can prep and all this stuff, and people already have elections. That's fine. I'm okay with that. But again, this idea, this easy, they don't have easy access. What is constituting for them easy? Because to me, easy would be you get your ass on the internet, you put your state, you put your information in, you find what you're looking for, and then you pay. And then you pay. You pay that little amount, right? So instead of you going out to go get a vape or getting beers and shit, go get your goddamn birth certificate, bro. And you know, here's the thing that kind of upset, that's kind of weird. Stephen A. Smith claims to be an independent. This dude is here claiming to be bipartisan, right? Part of this bipartisan policy center. And Stephen A. says, man, does it validate the Jim Crow argument? And this dude said, yeah, bro, how? Explain how this goes into Jim Crow. And Stephen A. Smith just, okay. One thing about Stephen A. Smith, this joker, he don't push back when he needs to push back. He'll go on a rant, but he don't push back. Like, here would have been pushed back. Okay, but I don't hear you. But why would that validate the Jim Crow Act? None of the information he just told you right now would validate Jim Crow Act because he's still stuck on the 12%. That's all he's giving me is 12% or 21.3 million Americans or whatever the number would be. They're the only ones that don't have the ability to show citizenship. Then we go into that. But then you're telling me that the rest of America, the 88% can and could and have the tools and the means for it. So this is not Jim Crow. Not even close to Jim Crow. Not even close. Now, there's a part in the end here that I do want to hear. No, I didn't want to like his shit.
Verification is standard in other areas of life. So what's the problem here? What's wrong with applying that standard here? For a question like that, what would your response be?
Yeah, again, 85% of Americans do support voter ID at the polls. Like that has been pretty clear. It's been clear for 20 years. So that means that you have significant numbers of Democrats who agree with voter ID. And the Bipartisan Policy Center has agreed to limited ways of doing voter ID at the polls as well. The problem here is that that's not what this bill does. At least that's not only what this bill does. This bill has many other requirements that I really don't think many voters understand. So even if you want to posit that election integrity and making sure without a shadow of a doubt that non-citizens aren't on the voter rolls, this probably isn't even the best way to do it. That's another issue that I think we should discuss because there are better ways of doing this. There are numerous government databases out there at the state and federal level where you're in those databases and the government knows whether you're a citizenship. This bill is requiring somebody to bring a paper or an ID in person to show somebody who's probably not trained in how to verify that document about their citizenship. If you really want to do this, I would certainly recommend doing it more in the way of a back-end verification, using all of the data that we already have about voters and confirming their citizenship that way so that the burden shifts from the voter to the state. And in those edge cases, and there won't be that many because I do think that the databases that exist will capture almost all voters. In those edge cases, then we should be working directly with those voters to make sure that they get those documents they need to prove their eligibility. That's how I would do it, as opposed to trying to force this down the voters.
But if they did exactly what you just suggested, Mr. Weil, wouldn't that take long? Wouldn't that be a process?
I mean, look, this is all process. That's why I wouldn't do it in an election year. But if you're going to do it, that'd be the way to do it. I think that's more of the issue. None of this can happen quickly. That's the other problem with the Save America Act, that the bill becomes effective on the date of enactment. That's fairly rare for federal law. Usually there's an implementation period. Florida just passed a version for their state of the SAVE Act, and even Florida decided that it was going to be implemented starting January 1st. So they understood that you don't do this in an election year. You do not upset the system when the system's already kind of locked in. Certainly, I think that the voters would be confused by this process, and that's why we're trying to avoid that in this cycle.
Here's my thing. He tells you, "Oh, I would do it this way," but no specifics to how you would do it. He said that it would flip over to where the state would be the one required to provide the verification or the confirmation that you are U.S. citizens. How would you do it? Right? How would you do it? Would you scan the person's face, facial recognition? What? Okay, so why couldn't it be that the person brings their ID, they have it in the system, they start looking the person up, because obviously in today's age, they can find anybody in any system. They match it up, okay, U.S. citizen. Like, that's not difficult for me to say, show me some ID. All right, cool. Let me verify your ID. I'm gonna look you up, put your name on there. This database, apparently, that everybody knows, right? That the states have, boom, boom, okay, U.S. citizen born here in the United States. All right, you're good. That's it. What process would that be? If the system is already in play, which means that they're already recording all of this and putting in a database, then if I bring my driver's license, right, because cops do this when they pull your goddamn information, when they pull you over and they say, driver's license and registration, please. They go in the back of they go to their car, they put that shit in there and they look you up. Bada bing, bada boom, you're in the system. You're already in the system. So I don't think it's as complicated as he's saying, right? And if you're going to shift it to the states, okay, cool. But I don't see a problem with it. And again, I don't, you know, Stephen is like, oh, but that sounds like a process. Sounds like a process. Bro, push him. I would have been like, hey, okay, explain your system. Explain how you implement it. And he just gave us so much general stuff. We need specifics when it comes to it, because if you're going to propose a plan, propose it better than the one that, or you say that, oh, this is not a good way of doing it, and explain your plan. But guys, what do you think? What do you think about the SAVE Act? Do you think it's going to pass? The Republicans just can't move around. The Democrats are going to stall this thing. You know, but what do you think about the SAVE Act? Should it be passed? Should it not be passed? Yeah, what's your comment on that? And what's your comment on Stephen A. Smith and this guy right here, man? What do you think? You think that he brings up valid points, or is it just, you know, just more talking points from the same side? All right, guys. But let me know. Thank you for liking and subscribing to the channel, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.